Welcome to a brand new section as we advance your web design to the modern web. And really one of the key features of the modern web is responsive frameworks. You don't have to always work with them, but it's really important for you to know about them and know to choose when do you want to work with one, or when do you want to develop one yourself, or when do you want to not even care about it. So this lecture is really going to be all about working with responsive frameworks, and in it we're going to ask ourselves a few questions, starting with what are responsive frameworks, continuing into working in a case of a certain framework which is called the Twitter Bootstrap, and we're going to use that throughout the chapter to showcase what responsive frameworks are and how to work with them. Now, as we talk about that, once we understand how the Twitter Bootstrap works, we're going to also dig into the CSS rules involved with it, components and how to add them, and how to enable features that would be available only through enabling JavaScript plugins for the Twitter Bootstrap. We're also going to look at something that's called Less, which enables you to take CSS and turn it into a programming language that is compiled. Now, you don't really need to know JavaScript for this chapter as well, but what we're going to do is we're going to show you the steps involved and how could you theme your Bootstrap. And it's a little bit theoretical at this stage, but once we get there you'll understand what it's all about. But it really puts a lot of power in your hand, making you capable of modifying and improving Twitter Bootstrap to fit your needs. Alright, so let's start with this lecture, and in this lecture we really want to understand what frameworks are and what responsive frameworks are. So we're going to ask ourselves basically 4 questions, and then we'll answer them throughout this lecture. The first question is, what are development frameworks? The second one is, what are responsive frameworks? Then we're going to look at the advantages and the disadvantages of working with frameworks in general. So let's get started. What are development frameworks? Now, development frameworks are just like any framework. They're basically outlines, and these outlines are basic structures that are living above the common language. So if you're working in CSS, it lives above CSS, and it simplifies your interaction with CSS by providing with pre-configured solutions that are time-saving, because they solve a common problem or a common design problem that the language itself does not answer, but you will see that you need it often. An example for that might be if you're working with jQuery. jQuery is a framework and is a solution for the fact, well, one of its core solutions is that it's really hard to select things in HTML. So in essence, jQuery just on the get-go enables you to select things more easily, and by that also hides a lot of the differences between the different browsers and enables you to connect with all the different browsers in the same way. So that's one framework, an example of a framework that is a little bit different than our framework, because the framework that we're going to be focusing on is not necessarily a development framework, but a framework that solves throughout holistically the need to build responsive websites. So really the goal here is also that, just as the copy says, you could build your own framework. Just by being a developer, starting to collect your own library of things that you need commonly and thinking abstractly out of a specific project or out of a specific task automatically is a process of building and aggregating your own framework. I'm personally a big fan of you building your own framework whenever you can, when time permits it. Whenever you don't have the capability, skill, or time, then obviously you would want to approach a third-party solution that would save you time, which is always a great thing. Alright, so let's move on to the next question, which is, what are responsive frameworks? We know what framework is. A responsive framework, as the name implies, is all the things that we were doing so far, building our websites. So basically it's targeting web development. Not only do they target web developer, there's solutions that use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to enable you to create a responsive website more easily. And that's really what a responsive framework is. It's a library of things that its goal is to save you time when you need to build pages quickly. Alright, so we know what a responsive web page is. Let's talk about advantages of using frameworks and disadvantages. So one of the advantages of working with a framework is that it speeds time. It makes you develop a lot faster, and for most common problems, it solves all of your problems. It enables you to do a lot more things without needing to know the nitty-gritty details of the thing that it's trying to hide. In this case, if you're building a responsive website, then it helps you cut down your need to understand too deeply CSS. It enables you to cut down the need to understand JavaScript even. It saves you time and saves you from needing to know things because it will automatically provide those features and even provide ways for you to customize those features. And usually it is well documented, such as the case that we're going to be looking at, which is the Twitter Bootstrap, which is a popular case. All right, so now that we talked about the advantages, we must talk about disadvantages. The first and the big one is that it raises your file sizes. Now, that is a big negative. If you're starting your project and it's much bigger, it automatically cuts down on them. It automatically adds to also performance issues, because if you're loading up a lot more stuff, then you're doing more stuff automatically. So it's a problem of file size. It's a problem on a performance level, just automatically. If you have all these features that are available and you just don't need them, that really comes down to the next problem, is that they solve a lot of times a lot more things that you really need. So if they're solving a million things and all you need is to solve one problem, such as if you're using jQuery just to select items on the screen, but you're not using jQuery for anything else, then you are literally overusing or underusing the library and making it not really valuable for you to use it, really, if there was another solution that was easier. So one of the stuff that you want to do when you're thinking about what framework and if to use a framework is how deeply are you going to use it, and how much is it going to help you save time and have access to different performance related issues. And it all goes down to that balance that you have to ask yourself in between every single project. Now, the biggest disadvantage is when you hit a problem, which will happen if you're building something that is unique, that is not common template. If you're building something that is relatively advanced, you are going to end up finding yourself not being able to do it because the library did not find a solution for it. And those scenarios could become incredibly hard to create a solution on your own many times. So those are really the advantages and the disadvantages. And I urge you to use libraries once in a while and use without them once in a while, and try to build your own library once in a while, and then come up with a solution to yourself and maybe play around and change it based on the situation, based on how much money you're making on the project, based on how much time you have, based on how complex the project that you need, and the support that you have from the library itself. All right, so that's it. That is really our conversation about what are responsive frameworks, and we looked at the advantages and disadvantages. In the next lecture, what we're going to do is we're going to look into the Twitter Bootstrap example, and that's going to be our case sample for responsive web libraries, really, frameworks. So see you in the next lecture when we explore that.